Well, good evening, everyone. It's so nice to see all of you gathered together here tonight in our Tres Forum. Welcome to the Malloy Lecture in the Arts. I'm Bill Harmer, the Executive Director of the library. Thanks to the generosity of the late Susan Malloy, the Malloy Lecture in the Arts has enabled the Westport Library to bring extraordinary talent to Westport since 2002. The Malloy Lecture aims to highlight individuals whose work has significantly influenced and enhanced an appreciation of the arts for audiences of all ages. Past programs have included playwright Arthur Miller, artists Christo and Jean-Claude, musicians Joshua Bell and Frederick Chu, poet laureate Billy Collins, author Joyce Carol Oates, actor Christopher Plummer, stage, film, and theater star John Lithgow, Salman Rushdie, and playwright, actor, and educator Anna DeVere Smith, just to name a few of the fantastic guests we've had in the past. Before I introduce tonight's guest and host, I just want to take a moment to pause and reflect on where we are at as a community. After months of isolation and social distancing, isn't it wonderful to find us all gathered together in person again? I can't tell you how pleased it makes me to see all of us gathered tonight to celebrate our love of the arts. I just couldn't be more proud of this library and everything that we've accomplished during the pandemic. Because of our vision for with the Transformation Project and looking out to the future, and with the establishment of our Verso Studios, we've been able to continue to provide programming and services and help all of us stay connected, albeit sometimes virtually, and share our resources with many others throughout Fairfield County and beyond. I'm just so proud of this library and grateful to all of you for your ongoing support, so thank you. Just as we're coming together here in Westport, Broadway too is coming back to life, and this evening we are excited to be able to feature and honor one of Broadway's greats, the remarkable and highly esteemed Kelli O'Hara. Kelli has established herself as one of Broadway's leading ladies. She's a 7-time Tony Award nominee. In 2015, her portrayal of Anna Leonowens in the critically acclaimed revival of The King and I garnered her a Tony Award for Best Leading Actress in a Musical. She reprised the role while making her West End debut and performed a limited engagement at Tokyo's Orb Theater. A native of Oklahoma, Kelli moved to New York City in 1998 and enrolled in the Lee Strasberg Institute for Acting. She made her Broadway debut in Jekyll and Hyde and followed it with Sondheim's Folly's Sweet Smell of Success. In 2013, Kelli committed to a production of The Light in the Piazza at Seattle's Intiman Theater. The show landed on Broadway in 2005 and earned Kelli her first Tony and Drama Desk Award nomination. After that, she moved from one critical and commercial success to another with Tony-nominated performances in The Pajama Game, South Pacific, Nice Work If You Can Get It, Kiss Me, Kate, and The Bridges of Madison County. Kelli made her Metropolitan Opera debut in 2014 production of The Merry Widow. Kelli's film and television credits include her Emmy-nominated performance in the web series The Accidental Wolf, as well as the role of Aurora Fane in Julian Fellowes' The Gilded Age, which is upcoming on HBO, so make sure you tune into that. What you might not know about Kelli is that her latest performance included a trip to the 50th anniversary of the New York City Marathon, where she completed and finished the marathon. What an incredible accomplishment that is. Congratulations, Kelli, on that magnificent achievement. Kelli is married to musician and filmmaker Greg Naughton. As a mother of young children, she spends much of her time off the stage and screen working to further arts and education. She serves on the boards of New York City Center, the New York Pops, Kelli also serves on the Artistic Advisory Board of SAY, the Stuttering Association for Youth, where she was awarded the Bud Mayer Advocacy Award in 2015 for her work with that charity. Kelli was also the co-ambassador for Kids on Broadway, Kids Night on Broadway in 2016, and was named national spokesman for theater in our schools. Joining Kelli in conversation tonight is the equally talented and renowned director, Bartlett Sher. He is most known for having won both the Tony Award and the Drama Desk Award in 2008 for Best Director of a Musical for his production of South Pacific. Bartlett attended the College of the Holy Cross in Worcester, Massachusetts. He started his work as company director at the Guthrie Theater. He then served as artistic director at the Intiman Playhouse in Seattle until 2008, when he was named the resident director of Lincoln Center Theater in New York City. He remains as resident director of Lincoln Center Theater, where his Tony-nominated productions include Lerner and Lowe's My Fair Lady, J.T. Rogers' Oslo, Rodgers and Hammerstein's The King and I, Golden Boy, Blood and Gifts, Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown, Joe Turner Comes and Gone, South Pacific, Awake and Sing, and The Light in the Piazza. He directed the recent Broadway productions of To Kill a Mockingbird, Fiddler on the Roof, and Bridges of Madison County. Incredible, right? He currently serves on the board of the Society of Stage Directors and Choreographers. His upcoming productions include the opera Intimate Apparel and the film Oslo, written by J.T. Rogers and produced by Mark Platt. Before I pass things along to Kelli and Bartlett, I want to acknowledge and thank my good friend Jim Ezzies. He's somewhere in the house tonight. Jim was instrumental in helping make tonight's program a reality. Thank you, Jim, for all of your help in bringing this to life tonight. And now, without further ado, let's hand the show over to Kelli and Bartlett. Let's welcome them to the Westport Library stage.
Sorry. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
Hi. I'm going to lead this discussion, so I'm going to say a few things at first just to kind of introduce us, and then take us through a few questions, and hopefully cover the extraordinary career. Kelli asked me to do this, and I was like very excited to give it a try. I have no interviewing skills whatsoever, but I'm going to do my best to kind of slowly draw us through and get the picture of her amazing career. Because really what I'm trying to do is figure out, how does somebody like Kelli O'Hara come to be? What do you go through in your life in a career and all of those things to come to this person who has accomplished so much? And what are the kind of things required of somebody to be a great Broadway star, and somebody who works in television and works in opera? So those are the questions that kind of go into this as we start. But and now Kelli has no idea what questions I'm asking. I tried to kind of float a few of them, and she knocked them all down, so I stopped asking. So I'm going to go in my own weird order, and we'll do some songs as well. So here we go. All right, you ready? My first question. On September 11th, 2021, the 20th anniversary of 9/11, Kelli O'Hara sang at the memorial in front of 4 presidents and Nancy Pelosi to honor this extraordinary event. And it was very moving to me. I remember watching it on YouTube. I don't know if you've seen it on YouTube. She sang a Rodgers and Hammerstein song called You'll Never Walk Alone. It was very moving, and it seemed this extraordinary culmination of her work and her life. What was that like?
You're right. That is surprising. A culmination of my life. That's what that felt like, to be there in front of those presidents, in front of the people who were families and friends of victims, with their signs and their posters, singing a song written by Rodgers and Hammerstein, which is the first composer and lyricist I ever heard, because I grew up in western Oklahoma, so I saw Oklahoma. And so I began singing, never knowing that that would be something, you know, honoring these lives in such a big way. I just about lost myself there. I started to sing. I couldn't have prepared myself for what I would see when I walked up onto the podium, which was the gathering of people. So it was very emotional. But I believe somewhere deep down inside, I was sort of born to do that sort of thing, to use my voice in a more purposeful way than just being a performer, but to be someone who uses my voice to comfort or to feel or to bring joy. That is my hope. So yes, it being a culmination of a lot of things is the right way to put that.
Yeah, it was a very beautiful moment. You should go home and watch it on YouTube because it's very powerful, and you feel like the country come together. And the American musical, which we all participate in, is this art form that's uniquely American. And at the same time, we went through this great trauma, and it sort of brought together all of these forces, which was very moving. Okay, I'm going to jump around now.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So in 1998,
Yes.
okay, you came to New York, I believe, right?
That's right.
And you were a kid right out of college, I
Yes.
believe. What's it like, and what were the first kinds of auditions like that you took when you first walked into a room? Because you're not Kelli O'Hara yet, right? And what was the experience of a kid?
So.
And what were your dreams? What were your feelings? What were you thinking about as you made this big shift from like that into beginning this journey to find out what you wanted? What did you expect? That kind of thing.
Well, I think I should just say very quickly that I didn't visit New York at all until I was 21 years old. The first time I visited was my junior year in college, and then I visited again my senior year, and then I moved there with zero experience. The naivete is what got me where I am. I walked into audition rooms thinking, well, I belong here. Little did I know that the pool was huge. I just didn't think of it that way. I thought of it as it was my dream. I wanted to do it. I was going to do it. So I remember marching myself down. I moved on a Thursday. It was September 3rd, I think. And I went on a Monday morning to stand in line at a non-equity audition at Raw Space on 42nd Street. And I marched in my lavender business suit because I was going to interview for a job, which was an audition. That's how I thought of it. I was going to get a job. So I had a lavender business suit on and my character shoes, and I walked into the room, and Mary Mitchell Campbell was playing that audition, who's a great accompanist and pianist. And that was the days when you could sing a whole song. I told a story with my song. I got that job. I got that job on a Monday. It was Something's Afoot in Sugarloaf, New York. And it was non-union. It was so much fun. And I was sort of off and running. I was doing a little temp work at the time. I temped at the Cafe Carlisle and in the offices on the phone. I was terrible. I had no skills. But that audition came to pass, and I got to do my first job. And then I went to my second one, and it went off from there. So I was one of those people who had all these expectations and I sort of, all the stuff that was the real stuff, I was clouding out, and just what I thought would happen was happening. I can't explain it. Yeah.
So then it's a big thing if you do a Broadway production. One of the big rituals, aside from there's many rituals that go with them. One of them is honoring people who do their debut. So it's always a big thing. If you have a cast of 20 people, you might have 6 people making their debut, but it becomes a kind of way of bringing people on. Your debut, I believe, was Jekyll and Hyde?
That's right.
What was that like?
Jerk. We know each other way too well. This goes back.
What's your favorite show of yours?
No. So I ended up doing that. The third job I got was the national tour of Jekyll and Hyde, which was a great time. I had a wonderful time. It wasn't the kind of singing I needed to do. I was really trying to sing pop. I didn't have any business doing that. I had an opera degree. But I ended up coming into the Broadway show right at the end of its run, this last 6 months of its run, because the girl that I would have fit the role got pregnant. I fit the costumes. They moved me from the tour right into the show. It was a very different production. It was very tired. No one said a thing. I learned my track from an assistant to an assistant to an assistant by myself during the daytime. And the night I went on, there was a nice man in the cast, and we're getting ready to enter. We entered like this. He tapped me on the leg and he said, "Congratulations, kid." And that was how I made my Broadway debut. And nobody really wanted a naive kid with a lot of energy in that production. So those 6 months weren't necessarily the easiest for me. But I was determined to go on to the next.
But then you did some other amazing shows. You did Sweet Smell of Success, which was great, and Dracula, and you did My Life with Albertine, which wasn't on Broadway, but so you were building for yourself a kind of work and starting to understand what your future could be. It was starting to make sense to you. Okay, so I'm going to switch again. Okay. It's like a party game.
Yeah.
Okay. You were raised in Elk City, Oklahoma,
That's
correct?
right.
In a large Catholic family, I believe?
Yeah.
And I know nothing about Elk City. I've never been to Oklahoma. But what kind of upbringing was that like? Because you also went to Deer Creek High School, correct?
You've done your research.
I have. But it's so weird to me, knowing you as well as I do, to think of places like Elk City and Deer Creek, which seem like named for famous animals.
Right.
You know,
well, it's interesting because I moved from Elk City to Edmond Deer Creek my junior year of high school. We moved right in the middle of high school, and the team mascot had been the Elks, and I moved to the Antlers.
Yeah.
That's Oklahoma. No, I did. I grew up in the small town where my parents had both grown up in Elk City, which was a small farm town in western Oklahoma, right by the Texas Panhandle. But my father, both of my parents went back to school, got their masters while we were kids. My dad went back to law school in his 40s, which had been his dream since being a young kid, but he wasn't able to do it because of having to go back and farm for his father who was ill. And that really showed me something. And so when he finished, I was probably a 7th or 8th grader, and when he finished, we moved to towns. It was very hard for me. I didn't want to do it. I went kicking and screaming, but I was 16 years old, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. We moved to the big city of Edmond, which is right outside Oklahoma City, Deer Creek Antlers, and I met a voice teacher who was a student of Florence Birdwell. Anyway, so that led my path from then, and that's how I got to those places.
Because Kelli, the great thing about Kelli, because I can talk about what makes a wonderful actor, the skills that are required of a Broadway performer is not just great singing, which we'll talk about, but also wonderful acting, but also great physical skills. And Kelli was an athlete. Was a good soccer player, and these things these are really important skills that go into making. She's danced in shows that we've done. There's all these things are required and asked of people. Yeah. I said danced, right? Yeah, a little bit. But were you ever in a musical in high school?
Yes, we did. We did Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, Carousel, and West Side Story.
And what did you play?
I was Maria in West Side Story.
Yeah, shock horror.
Yes.
Okay.
Wouldn't play that again. But Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, and the first one I did was Carrie and Carousel, and that was all at Deer Creek. In Elk City, I did little summer theater, but we didn't have as much of a theater program.
And this compelled you to go to Oklahoma City.
What compelled me to go to Oklahoma City University, when I was 5 in western Oklahoma, there was a Miss America named Susan Powell in 1981, and she was from Elk City, Oklahoma. And I heard her sing, and I was a little girl, and I asked a question how she learned to sing that way, and they told me she'd studied with a woman named Florence Birdwell. And so when I was 5 years old, I made a decision I would study with Florence Birdwell, and it never changed. It never changed.
And what people don't realize is, because I work in the opera as well and work in musical theater, et cetera, is the singing teacher becomes absolutely the center of the training of the person becoming a great singer, because it teaches you everything and it's very personal. So many great opera singers have extremely close relationships with their singing teachers. They're like very important. They will call them from anywhere. They will, as they prepare a role, as they do anything, it becomes incredibly important. So tell us a little bit about Mrs. Birdwell and what she was like and how she...
This was backstage at The King and I, is one of the last trips that she ever made. She was my ultimate mentor. She was a parent. She was my acting teacher. She was my therapist. she was my singing teacher and my friend. So, she just really gave me a different outlook on life and what I would be capable of, and really just sort of broke me down in this great positive mentorship type of thing. The kind of thing I needed to hear. The kind of thing I for some reason I wanted to hear, which was, no, that's not it. Let's keep digging. Let's keep searching. Nope, nope, no ma'am. Let's do it again. And it built me some thick skin, I tell you, and I don't think I ever would have been able to move to New York and sort of, the beginning seemed easy, but then there were definitely times in there where that thick skin came in handy.
Right. So, because the reason I ask this is that some of this, a lot of the experience of theater is not learned in the traditional way. Like, there are a lot of programs, and your kids are going to say, oh, we want to go study theater at college, and I will discourage you from allowing them to do that. But the reason I say that is because it's often a apprentice, one-to-one way of learning. You learn through the work, you learn through in a different way than you would if it was like a class situation. So it builds in its own unique way. And I always think of Mrs. Birdwell, you'll find with any wonderful artist that there's often a figure who resonates. They either measure themselves against or helps them move along. She also taught Kristen Chenoweth and some other wonderful singers. These are important figures in our lives in the arts. Okay, so now I'm going to jump to Light in the Piazza.
Great.
Which is where we met.
Yes.
I was not the director on the first production. The production was produced at Intiman. It was directed by the book writer, Craig Lucas. I was overseeing the production. And you played the role of Franca.
That's right, the sister-in-law.
The sister-in-law.
Not Clara, yeah, the
Correct. And that was one of those, was my first big Broadway show. So it had a journey. It started in Seattle. Then we did a production which I took over in Chicago. You still played Franca. Mm-hmm. And then when we came into New York, we changed roles.
Yes, we did.
Okay. What did that whole journey feel like as you were going through that kind of experience?
Well, you talk about Jekyll and Hyde, and you start that way, and then you have to find out where you actually belong. When I did things like I worked with Ricky Eden Gordon on a show called My Life with Albertine, and then before that I had met Adam Gettle, who's the grandson of Richard Rodgers, who wrote The Light in the Piazza, and he was writing this more soprano-y, classic, bent type of score. And so the whole process was magic to me. We first started at Sundance, Utah in a workshop, and he was writing this sister-in-law, and I just said, put high E's in it, put opera in it. That's why it's written the way it is, because I asked him to make it operatic so that I could have this great time singing it. And so I was just having this blast, and so I loved playing Franca. I loved getting to play that kind of role. And then I loved Clara too, but that's not the role I was playing for the whole time. But then he rewrote some of Clara when I moved into the role, made it higher, made it more classical. And so that score in general started to make me feel like I was home, like I was starting to be on my path.
And you'll find, all of you who hopefully like musicals, maybe even love them, musicals are collaborations. So often on a lot of the great musicals, they're written for particular performers. So when she says that Adam is writing it for her, he knows her voice and actually can help the voice go with the performance. Mm-hmm. What did it feel like, say, how did Broadway change for you in terms of the experience once some of the success of that show happened for you? Because it was your first Tony nomination, things started to shift a little bit. Did your life feel like it was evolving or changing in some ways around that?
Well, I think like with most people going through any sort of journey like this, everything started happening at once. I started working more in a more satisfying and more constant way, but then I was also falling in love with my future husband. This was 19 years ago. And we were getting engaged, and we were going to get, so all of these things were happening at once. And so I wasn't thinking of it as, oh, here I go, I'm really here. And I was more like, whoa, if I can just keep steady right now with everything starting to happen to me. And then we added our children to the mix, and, things just go, and you do what you can each day. I don't think you look at it in that moment like the whole picture. You're just going day by day.
Right. So then, from there, you and I had a different experience, which is instead of making a new musical, which is something like Piazza, which is its own whole adventure because you're rewriting, you can do anything you want. We moved into South Pacific, where you take on a role that's been already played by people. They call it a revival. I call it just a hopefully good production. But that's a very different experience, right?
Yeah.
Because Nellie Forbush was iconically played by Mary Martin. It had not been on Broadway for 60 years before we did it again. It took on this huge kind of pressure in a weird way to do it. It was a deep investigation. I see it as very different and very personal for you, because it was an investigation of Nellie Forbush, who was a person who was changing her perception of race, of all these things over the course of the piece. And we investigated that very intensely with this production. How did that change for you further as you kind of went into that kind of interpretation?
Well, I'll just say this, just to talk about how you put things together. I had this mentor, Florence Birdwell, and when I moved to the city, I had a new mentor. Bart and I have done four Broadway shows together, so I started to build who I was as an actor under his tutelage, I guess you should say. So with Clara in The Light in the Piazza, who had a handicap, who had a mental, an accident, a head injury as a child. What does this make as an adult? We studied blunt trauma to the head injury. We studied behavior. He started to make me understand what it meant to see through the lens of another person, put your own heart into it. So by the time we got to South Pacific, I have Southern roots. I have deep Southern roots. We talked a lot about my maternal grandmother and her sister Tootie and all the women in Arkansas that I had grown up with, and how Nellie Forbush had been sort of a hero to them. But what did Nellie Forbush stand for? And could Nellie Forbush change? And what would she go through the story? And how we wanted to tell South Pacific differently than it had been told in the 1940s. And to Bart's credit, that production was changed, broken down, slowed down, made more serious, also while keeping all the joy. And I think people were really, really impacted by it. We were ready to hear that story. And so I was so proud to be part of something that felt like journeying into something that would make me grow. And hopefully it was happening before that, but I think that's when I was really learning that through my work, through the catharsis of my work, I could also learn a lot about myself and how to be better myself.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing we're learning as artists, that we are other people. We interpret other things, but we never can separate them from who we are.
Yeah.
And also from what time we do them in, and who we are in them as Americans, as all of these things, and what difficult questions we have to ask ourselves about how we're different, who we are in that world. And you've been very strong in your advocacy in that way and all of that. But let's take a little bit of a break from that and perhaps sing a song from South Pacific.
Yeah, and I chose to sing this one from South Pacific because I sort of put it away in this idea that it can be a little cliche. We think of it that way sometimes, and yet in this last year and a half or two, as our industry has gone through a huge reckoning and our country, I want to be one of those people in my education of it all who remains hopeful. So this song means a lot to me these days. When the sky is a bright canary yellow, I forget every cloud I've ever seen. So they call me a cockeyed optimist, immature and incurably green. I have heard people rant and rave and bellow that we're done and we might as well be dead. But I'm only a cockeyed optimist, and I can't get it into my head. I hear the human race is falling on its face and hasn't very far to go. But every whippoorwill is selling me a bill and telling me it just ain't so. I could say life is just a bowl of jello and appear more intelligent and smart, but I'm stuck like a dope with a thing called hope, and I can't get it out of my heart. Not this heart.
because we can talk all we want about this, but there's nothing that explains it better than when she just sings. Do you know what I mean? Because it's very hard to explain the kind of difference between the elevated voice. You know, we talk, and what the whole idea of musicals is weird. You know, people talk and then suddenly they start singing and then they talk again, and we accept all this. But there's something magical about the human voice when it elevates into song. And it just picks up, everything gets magnified, it gets bigger, it gets clearer. I think they call that an I am song versus an I want song.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I want songs come in every musical, usually the second or third song in the show. In Piazza, the I want song was...
Uffizi.
In the Uffizi.
Yeah.
This is an I am song. I am a cockeyed optimist. I am what I am. You'll find these kind of tropes within musicals. And good musicals are hard to make because you have to have reasons to sing things, right? You have to have a plot. Well,
you should.
Yeah. Well, no, you have to have a plot that's big enough, or the scale of it is big enough that's once you finish speaking, you can't do anything but sing. And that's where they're fun to make, but they're also, they're very tricky. But we'll get to more singing in a bit. The next question I want to ask you was a little bit about your family, because when we're building this world as an artist, we're going on this one track where we're moving from show to show and we're doing all this other stuff. And people don't realize how demanding theater is. You work 6 days a week, you do 8 shows a week, a show could run a year, 2 years. It's very, very hard work. But you've built a family.
Yep.
And how did you, they're here somewhere, there they are.
Yes, well,
They're
you
all
built
over
one
there.
too, because your child is here with my children.
daughter's here too.
One of your children.
But how do those kind of decisions get made, and how do you handle that? Or how has that changed for you over the time since your kids were born and you started a family while you were trying to track your way through this work?
Well, it's nice to work consistent over and over again with someone who's also doing the same thing. When I met you, Lucia was 2, and she's now at Williams. And when Phoebe was born, so was Owen, my son. So they've grown up together. You work with people who have like minds, where you say, hey, you don't say, hey, I gotta go, my kid, da-da-da, but you do come to work and you say, oh, this happened with my child, or can I bring my child to work, or whatever it is. And, South Pacific, I did South Pacific until I was 5.5 months pregnant with Owen. And there were a lot of
Cartwheels.
there was a lot of cartwheels in a bathing suit.
Yeah.
With a baby in the belly. But there was a lot of understanding at work. I started to make choices a little differently because of my children and what they needed from me, bringing them with me when I could, and working, like I said, working with people who understand that and respected that and honored that. But that was never an option for me personally. I was always going to dream of having a family. That was what I wanted to do. Not everybody wants to do that, but Greg and I felt similarly about that. So it wasn't, we'll do this when, or later, we'll put this, it's gonna happen now. I'm gonna be in a swimming suit until I'm 6 months pregnant because and we're gonna have this baby now. And same thing that happened with my second one. I did shows pregnant, and I feel proud of that now. At the time it was hard. At the time I did the wrong thing and felt guilty for affecting a production. Now I feel proud because I have my children, and that so outweighs anything that might have happened with a certain production, because those things are fleeting, and my children are not.
So we then, so there's kind of 2 different areas I want to go quickly, and I don't want to lose too much time. Another thing that Kelli did, which almost no one in the musical theater has ever accomplished, was she decided for some reason to go and sing at the Metropolitan Opera. Okay, and to take on, with probably no doubt Miss Birdwell's encouragement in terms of training, to take on this incredible task of then trying to expand your work into the opera. I work in the opera as well, and the kind of singing is different. The Met is immensely, one of the most difficult places to sing in the entire world, because it's a huge house. It requires very big voices. What on earth made you think you could do that?
Well, you kept encouraging me, by the way.
Of course I did, yeah.
I think that it had been my dream to sing opera. I remember Mrs. Birdwell, when I left opera, when I decided not to go to grad school and just move to New York and take my chances, she said, maybe you'll get through the back door someday. And I remember I was working at Lincoln Center, and I was working at the Vivian Beaumont, and here's the Met. The stage doors are right next to each other. And I finally got an audition for the first time to sing at the Met. And I walked into the back door of the Met. And when I finally got Merry Widow, the first opera I did at the Met, I got flowers from Mrs. Birdwell, and they said, "You made it through the back door." And I think it was just one of those dreams that I thought, well, if I don't try. Now, I still, to this day, I don't think I necessarily need to be doing a lot of opera, or especially at the Met. But if I don't keep my voice, if I don't challenge myself, if I don't scare myself or jump off the cliff once in a while, then I don't grow. And so I keep doing this to myself. I keep dangling something in front of me, and I try to reach it. And it's like the marathon. I did that just so I will keep growing in certain ways. And so that's why I'm crazy that way, but I don't intend to stop doing that.
So I did ask her if she would do this for me, because just so you can hear the difference, is to sing a section of some Italian opera. Just so you can hear, because you have to learn another language, etc. If you don't mind, just trying.
Yeah, this might be a little loud, so just, I mean, not that but it might be, so I don't want to. Can you give me a D? This is a song called O luce di quest'anima from Lindo di Chamonix by Donizetti. And I chose to sing just the recitative in the beginning because I used to sing it about my husband, because it says that I've fallen in love with this artist and we're poor, but it doesn't matter because his talent makes me content, basically. Don't post that. Don't post that. Don't post it.
So it's just amazing. She did Così fan tutte at the Met, and just so you know, going out there and doing that with the orchestra, and you know, opera audiences, God love them. They're brutal, okay? And they really are very, you know, they're educated about opera. They have very strong opinions. So it's quite a risk and quite amazing. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here.
Okay.
Our next one of our big shows and a big accomplishment for us was King and I, which became an international thing. We did it at Lincoln Center. You won your first Tony Award. Okay.
Say first.
First one. It was a huge thing. We had an international cast with Ken Watanabe, who's the biggest movie star in Asia. It was a very, very incredible mixture of all of us to do it. What did that feel like, especially actually finally winning a Tony? Because I mean, you know, 7 nominations is a lot.
Yeah, no, it was glorious. It was joyful. You know, by the time I won one, my head was screwed on a little straighter, and it was a different thing, but you still get up there and sort of lose your mind. I really wanted to thank certain people. I wanted to thank you. I wanted to thank my parents and Mrs. Birdwell, and to thank my husband. And that's really what it's about. I didn't see it at that point in my career as something that would launch anything. I saw it as this great opportunity and this beautiful moment to celebrate that time in my life. And that's how I look at it. It was just extraordinarily happy in that moment. And then I got the flu because I was so overwhelmed.
It was overwhelming,
Yeah.
yes. It's always
Yeah.
so crazy. The other part of your work that I think people don't know so much about is that you also work in film and television. There's a whole series called The Accidental Wolf, which you can watch, I believe, on YouTube, right? Isn't it
Well,
YouTube?
it was out and then it was acquired because it started as a web series. We've been working on it for a long time. We've just finished the whole thing. The second season comes out in December. The final season, the third, will come out in March. So look for it on Apple and Topic and different places like that.
Right. But just to understand, and I just worked on a film for the first time, I'm like, been doing this a long time. The difference is quite huge in terms of scale of performance, how you learn, how you do that. And it's a huge thing to be able to think of. It's very few people in the whole universe who could do great musical theater, sing like she just sang in opera, and then do exceptionally well in Emmy nominations in something like film and television, including the Gilded Age, which is coming up.
Yes.
And how do you find the difference for yourself as an actor and performer in that medium than you do when you're performing it 8 times a week? And
Somebody asked me that question, and I think I liked the answer that came up, which was, well, you and I talk about truth all the time. We're truth seekers in our work. We want it to be authentic. We want it to filter and funnel through something that's very true, which means having to bring it through ourselves, because that's all we know. What's inside us is all that we know that's really, really true. And so sometimes you scream the truth and sometimes you whisper it. And for me, that's it. Sometimes the truth lies here. And sometimes the truth is here. And it depends on, and if you say, if your director or your lighting person or your mark says, you're right here, then that truth is right here. Yeah. But if I need to hit you in the very back row, it's but it's still exactly the same thing. That's how I think of it.
Yeah. And did you find in the work on television and film, because what I find weird about it is, and I'll just do a quick description of it, is I was used to like 4 weeks of rehearsal and then 10 days of tech, and then you got like 4 weeks of previews, and you like really detail it and you go through that. But when I worked on film, I realized that the first hour and a half that I worked on it was the rehearsal, okay? Yeah. And then with the next hour that we might film it was then tech and previews. So what had been an 8-week process was reduced to about 2.5 hours. And it's very scary because it goes really quickly, and the panic that you experience from actors who think this is going to be like imprisoned forever on film is pretty crazy. Did you feel that kind of experience? Did you start to learn how to like work quickly, or like how did you change
the thing
your
with
process?
Accidental Wolf, it's written and created and directed by my great friend Arian Moayed. He wrote beautiful scripts, but he also said, say what you want to say, that's better. Or like, do some version of this. And then you would sort of make it. And that felt great, because then it was just so naturalistic and he could take any take. Julian Fellowes, on the other hand, it's word perfect. And it's of a time period, the Gilded Age, circa 1880, right? There's a mid-Atlantic accent. So you're getting notes on your accent to say and, not and, and, and. And you're doing that while you're saying word perfect dialogue, which is a little antiquated. The writing's very wonderful, but it's a little, I would never say things in the way that I say them as Aurora Fane. And so I feel like that started to really get into my head. And so I had to I remember saying one time to myself, take a breath, slow down, and just mean it, tell the truth, because I was starting to get all mixed up with accent, word perfect, all that stuff, and I had to go back to the truth of it.
And what about scale? Because the scale of a performance in opera is so big, but in film that it can be like here.
Yeah.
And close, did you just reduce everything? Was it all much more?
Yes, it's all very, very just much like this. Yes. Quite, yes. That's how I felt like I did. I worked for 6 months like that, just very much like this. Yes. And then of course, that's where you are, but then you have to come in and do what's called ADR, which you're looking at yourself, as if that's not self-conscious enough, and having to match your lips because they didn't quite get your audio, not because of your talking, but because someone in background clinked a fork or something.
Yeah.
So you have to go back and put in, that's why you sometimes see a disjointed voice from, that's all, it's called ADR, and it really bugs me, but we have to do it once in a while.
So I'm heading toward our last thing, but one thing that's also happened is, again, another U-turn, do a huge U-turn now. This pandemic's had a huge impact on all of us. All of the events that have happened have had a huge impact on us. And I have found, going back to work after months and months away, and all of the events that happened to us as a country, that we're really, really very different now. We have to think about our work differently in terms of race, class, equality, inclusion, all of these questions. And it's a deep investigation, and one which I think is thrilling and very important for us to do. How do you see that beginning to have an impact on the way you're going to approach your work, or how you think about your work now?
Well, it already has so much. I mean, I think I do look at our industry as having a real responsibility, but also an opportunity to tell different stories, to just to broaden who's involved, who's writing, who's at the table, who's in the producerial seat, who's in the directorial seat, everything. And what I want to do with my choices is to make choices to be in the rooms that are doing that. And I think at this point in my life, every single choice I make, we're just finishing up The Accidental Wolf, I call the writer and I say, do we want to say this here? I don't want to be a part of saying this, or, oh, I think this is great that, I want to have a voice in what stories I'm telling, so that any content I put out there represents how I feel about all of these changes, and acknowledging the naivete and the lack of education I was having, thinking that we were there in different ways, or at least in our industry, right? So that wake-up call has been good and hard and useful. And I think that that right now, because I had a Broadway show that was that Adam Gettle and Craig Lucas have written, another one that wrote Light in the Piazza. And while we're quiet, we need to find out how to make that better before we bring it back. Just like you brought back To Kill a Mockingbird in new ways. We have that opportunity, and I feel good about using my voice in different ways for that, and joining efforts and causes to be a positive part of that change. And reinterpreting songs that I've sung a million times, and filtering them through something new, and choosing new material too.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an exciting time in theater. I think the next 20, 30, 40 years ahead are going to be more exciting than anything we saw before. So it's a very rich and powerful time. Okay, so now I'm going to go to Bridges of Madison County, which is a musical that we did in the middle of all this. But it's kind of different than all the others, because it's this very personal story of this housewife. It was a very hard show to get to work on Broadway, because it's not a great date show. Yeah, oh honey, let's go see that musical about the woman who has the affair and leaves her husband. Yeah, it's great.
She didn't leave.
She didn't leave. Sorry, she didn't leave. Who stayed with her husband? Sorry, but maybe anyway. But still, it was a very, very different thing. It was with Jason Robert Brown. The music's so incredible. And it has one song in it that's always been one of my favorites, which I think is very appropriate to sing here in your home, okay? And I think it's one that I think we should share as a way of closing our show and finishing us up, so.
I do too. This is one of my favorite songs to sing ever. And I'll just say that when we opened this show, I had just had my daughter 2 months before we started. It was a very strange time for me. I was, out of my mind doing it, but I was filled with love and filled with, I knew I wasn't an Italian immigrant like this woman was, but I was the daughter of a farm wife. This woman was. I was the granddaughter of a farm wife. I have a son and a daughter. It was 18 years from the year I moved from the fall that I moved to New York City when we did this show. And I grew up on 300 acres of farmland. And the reason I point out all of those things is you'll see just how personally this song was written for me, because all of those things show up in it. And it's called To Build Myself a Home. Oh, and by the way, I brought Dan Lipton out all the way out here from Long Island City. Dan and I met doing The Light in the Piazza in Chicago years and years ago, and we have been traveling this world ever since, playing every show, and so he's my main man. So I just wanted you to know Dan Lipton.
There's a boat that leaves from Napoli every Thursday in the morning, and a nervous bride can share a bed with her soldier from the States. For a week the ocean carries them over lost and churning water, and they land in New York Harbor, then to Pennsylvania Station, where they board a train that slices like a scythe through the fields of America. This is Albany, this is Buffalo, this is Cleveland, this is South Bend, this is Chicago, this is Osceola Station, where a truck will take them deeper into Iowa, to Winterset and 300 acres waiting to be tamed. And a blade of grass by blade of grass, and ear of corn by ear of corn, and bale of hay by day they build themselves a home. And day by day and year by year, from boy to man, from calf to steer, what's lost from there may not grow here, but comes the sun. Look what they've done. They've built themselves a home. At 21, a girl begins to grasp the world and how it spins. She grabs a box of safety pins and builds herself a home. And home is safe and home is fair. The porch, the bath, the kitchen chair, the sharp and unfamiliar air that blow by blow she comes to know. To build herself a home with a son and a daughter and a million miles between. The fire she used to set, the heart she used to break, the lies she used to tell, and the woman she grew up to be. I learned to speak, I learned to sow, I learned to let the longing go. The tractor wheel, a foot of snow, I build myself a home. I change my words, I change my name. The fields go dry, the horse goes lame, the county fair, the football game for 18 years. It stays the same for 18 years. I'm proud I came and built myself a
Thank you all for coming. It's great.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
How about that?
This way?
What an extraordinary performance. I'm a little bit speechless after listening to that. Thank you both to Kelli and Bartlett for an extraordinary evening. One thing that I think we learned tonight is that, yes, opera, it can work in a public library. That was incredible to me. Thank you to everyone that was watching at home. Thank you to all of you for coming out this evening. But stick around. We're not done yet. Kelli and Bartlett are going to take a short break. They're going to come out for a little meet and greet. We've got some wine in the back there, so grab yourself a glass of wine. We're going to clear out some of the chairs, and let's stick around and enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you so much for coming out to this year's Malloy Lecture.